Hi everyone, and welcome to another session of Elevate 2016. My name is Claire Alloway, and I am a part of the marketing team at Jobvite. We're really excited to be bringing you this presentation and being a part of today's event. So hopefully you're getting some great things out of it so far. I'm going to keep this quick and just introduce our two speakers. First off, we have Ty, who's our senior recruiter here at Jobvite, and Mira, who works in the HR and recruiting departments as our coordinator. So with that, passing it over to Ty.
Hey everybody, nice to meet you all, and thanks for tuning in to our webinar on collaborative hiring. Well, to start off, in a perfect world, the hiring team should all work together to find the best candidates possible. But if it was a perfect world, us recruiters wouldn't have a job. In reality, competing priorities and perspectives can often be confusing or non-existent. Oftentimes, there's going to be unrealistic expectations that might make our jobs a little bit harder. For example, you might have young leadership that may be unexperienced at hiring. You might have a hiring manager who's been a while since they've had to hire and they might need a refresher. Your hiring manager might have unrealistic expectations. Maybe your hiring manager might be in a very stressful situation and a key team member might have just left and they need to fill that role yesterday. Maybe your team might just not be as good as they think they are at hiring. One has to grade each other's abilities to find a great hire. Well, actually, I should back up a little bit. Basically, a study by ITERATE found that when you asked hiring managers and recruiters to grade themselves and each other, they gave themselves an A and a C. Clearly, there's a gap. The goal is to bridge that gap. And you do that by building a collaborative hiring process. And that collaborative hiring process will hopefully build that new bridge. The goal of collaborative hiring is to find the best candidates possible and to also raise the bar while looking at those candidates at the same time. It also gives your coworkers a voice in the process and also builds their experience as a hiring team. If you don't know how to hire, you're not going to go very far in your career. It also adds accountability to those team members as well in the decisions they make in the hiring process. And it also speeds up that time to fill the role. Time is money, so the faster we can fill it, the better. The first thing we should do is start with the job description. The job description is the blueprint for the successful hire. It also shows the potential design flaws in the blueprints as well. Be sure to look for any red flags or any weird or unusual bullet points in that job description, and be sure to ask questions. The next is to establish a good relationship or partnership with your hiring team and, most importantly, your hiring manager. Your role is to facilitate the process. For example, no one hires as much as you do. It may have been a while, like I said earlier, that since your hiring manager is hired, and they might just be a little rusty on the process. You do this every day. So helping them to facilitate this in a kind of a flexible way is your job, especially in uncharted territory. So for example, if you're looking for someone that the team may not have hired before, and this is a new role, you want to make this as smooth and seamless as a process as possible, and you want to eliminate surprises. You can do this by asking the right question or questions. Here's some important ones here. How fast do you need to fill this? Do you need to fill this on a budget? If so, what budget? What skills does this person need to have? Where do they need to live? What are the current needs of the team? Are there weak spots in the team that this role is going to fill in for? Or do they just not have anybody like this on the team? Next is to define a good hire. The must-haves versus the nice-to-haves. What areas are they willing to compromise on? We've all been asked to find that perfect candidate or that unicorn or that purple squirrel, and our goal is just not to find that person wearing the unicorn mask. We're trying to find that person that can do the job, fit in with the company, and be a solid performer. You know, a realistic type person that actually exists. Next up is to outline the process step by step. Identify the necessary skills and qualifications this person needs to have. Figure out when and how skills should be tested. Create a hiring team to do that. and establish everybody's roles and responsibilities, including your own. And what I mean by that is some hiring managers want a little more from the recruiters, and they want them to be a little more involved in the hiring process than others. If you're on an engineering team, for example, recruiters are not engineers. If they were, well, I'd be making more money, we'll put it that way. But what it comes down to is that I don't know Java, I don't know C++, I don't know Spring. The people on that hiring team, when you set up that collaborative hiring process, are going to know that much better than you. And your job as the recruiter is basically to facilitate it, maybe look for some red flags, maybe look for culture fit problems, budget problems, things like that. Beyond that, it's up to the hiring team to decide if this is the perfect person for that technical role. Now here at Jobvite, they want us to be a little more consultative on the other roles, say like sales, marketing, or customer success roles. Because we're recruiters, we use the product, and we talk to people that sell these products to us all day long. So we're going to know if this is a great hire. Other than that, set expectations and reminders for the feedback. Keep the conversation going. Collaborate through your ATS if possible. So for example, what I mean by that, not to overplug our product, but Jobvite, for example, has a collaborative hiring team application, both mobile and built into the product. So for example, if I was looking for, say, a marketing associate with a very experienced marketing hiring manager, I could look at profiles and I could share them in real time and get real-time feedback through Jobvite. And also, I could read that information and use that to collaborate a little bit later. I could also build templates in the system that will allow us to hit basically what are the normal interview questions for a particular role. So what do you mean by that? For example, customer success. You could put in a template that says, give me an example of a hard customer. Give me an example of when you were successful with a customer, and you can have those built into the product. If it's not your ATS, do it the old-fashioned way. Instant message, text, call. What's important is to keep the conversation going and do not stop until you have someone sitting in that seat and hired. Next up, iterate and improve constantly. Always seek to improve the process as you're going. When a candidate comes through, ask what they liked about that candidate, what worked, what didn't work, and do this at every step of the process throughout the whole interview process until that person is hired. I think what I'll do now is I'll pass it over to Mira, who's both on our recruiting team and also our HR coordinator, and she's going to have a lot of great things to say about this.
Awesome. Thank you, Ty. So after the initial half of the collaborative hiring process where you establish a good relationship and have set the right expectations for your hiring manager and the hiring team, your job continues when the interview comes along. It's the next big milestone to focus on. So something that we kind of thought about here is if recruiting is marketing, then think of the interview as a mini trade show. In a trade show, you'd have that initial meeting when someone walks up to your booth to evaluate them as a good customer, as well as for them to evaluate your product. And that's really not unlike an interview. You have a short amount of time to not only evaluate whether your candidate is a fit for your company, but also for that candidate to gauge if the company is a fit for them. So in all aspects of advertisement, preparation, and the evaluation at the end, treat these interviews kind of like mini trade shows and previews of your product and your company for your candidate. So according to the Jobvite Seeker Nation from this year, about 47% of job seekers think the interview is the most important factor. And this really shouldn't be that surprising. This is the first time that the interviewer is actually experiencing the company in a human way. But often this takes kind of the back seat in the recruiting process. Usually becomes just inviting the people into the interview, inviting the candidate, and chasing after them to make sure that they get to the interview on time. And that's kind of all that happens. But like I said, we have to remember that the interview is the most human aspect of the recruiting process. You do have to work on your employment brand. There's the Glassdoor reviews, the phone calls, all that stuff is virtual and not really tangible. But the interview is really that first time the candidate gets to test their opinions and impressions of the company that they did get on those online sources, test their gut feelings about the company, and to really learn about the team and what the role is even about. And I know Ty's wife was kind of going through this recently where, she interviewed someone with a really great brand and a name, but the interview itself spoiled her first impression. I know, Ty, you wanted to say something about that.
Yeah, pretty much what you said. So I won't name names, but let's just say this was a very recognized international company that my wife was excited about speaking with about opportunities. And as the interview process went on, the recruiter just failed to keep her in the loop as to the process. I mean, the one thing you could do as a recruiter is if someone comes on site to interview with you, they've put their time, they put their energy into that. You owe them at least some follow-up within 24 hours of the role. And you don't have to lie to them. Be honest with them about where they're at in the process. They'll appreciate that. It really hurts your brand not to follow up with people and treat people like you would like to be treated.
Yeah, and that follow-up and all that stuff will come if you feel organized on your end. And so hopefully the next few steps can kind of help you with some tips to assemble a better interview team, create a better interview process, and then have a good experience with a candidate. So the first part is to make sure you assemble the right team. Like Ty said, you only have a certain amount of time with the candidate for them to really evaluate you, so make sure that it's well planned and a good use of everyone's time, including your interviewers in your company. So make sure that your team members that you do choose to put on your interview team set a good example of what the company is like, and then who are also able to really accurately gauge the talents and skills of your candidates. So this is the point where you kind of want to go back to those must-haves and nice-to-haves that Ty talked about in the job description section. You make sure that the people that you're choosing can evaluate those must-haves. Something you can do is, on that job description, on those must-have bullets, write the names of the people that you're going to have focus on those things. That'll be really helpful for you to make sure that you've checked all the boxes that you need to check as far as who's on your team. Then, once you've built a kick-butt team, you'll be able to start building a great actual interview, and you've got to make sure that the content's right. So again, this is a whole cyclical process. So again, you got to go back to that job description. Is it accurate? Does it depict what the job is? Does it depict what this candidate's going to even do when they get there? Because the worst thing that can happen is they come, interview for a position, and it's completely different than the job description, completely different from what they even want. And that's a waste of hours for everybody. So make sure that that is done first. And then once you do that, you have an outline of what's important. And then you need to make sure that you, like I said before, you match that with the person that's actually doing the interview. And what goes along with matching them is making sure that everyone's asking different questions. For example, for a customer success role, it is really important to know how a candidate dealt with a difficult customer. That's going to come up a lot as a CS person. But you don't need 3 of the 5 interviewers to ask that same question, because you go back to the debrief at the end and you end up having the same information, which is really unhelpful and a waste of, again, hours, time, money, all of that. So make sure that you can delegate that properly. And a way to do that is to use your ATS or recruiting expertise to create templates of interview questions, put them in sections like culture, strengths, weaknesses, and map those to the right people. And that's a good way to kind of get organized in the front end. But all in all in this section, to just make sure you be prepared. Prep for an interview on the company side the way you'd prep if you were being interviewed for a job. You don't want to go in unprepared, not knowing anything about the person or the company that you're interviewing. So just do a little research, look at the resume, look at the job description. And it's a good tips to give to your interviewing team, because they might not be as comfortable with it, they're not used to it, they could be interviewing for the first time, all the things that Ty said. So tell them to kind of think of it that way, and it'll be a good way for them to kind of put themselves in the other person's shoes. And to kind of dive a little bit deeper into the combination of a good team and a well-built interview is to make sure that each team member is evaluating for a different aspect of the role, but also make sure that that aspect that they're interviewing for is their strength. You don't want someone interviewing for knowledge on Java if they have no idea what Java is or how it works. You want to make sure that it maps to their skills and their strengths. And these are all things that you want to guide and suggest to the hiring team and the hiring manager. But again, this is their expertise. They know what the roles and expectations are, but giving them the ideas to really utilize their skills to interview will help them evaluate better as well. Okay, so the interview's over. Everyone evaluated for different things. You got all the knowledge that you need. Each person knows their part of the person. But now it's time to kind of put it together. Everyone knows a piece of this candidate, and you need to come back and debrief. And I think this can be forgotten sometimes because there's a rush to get that offer and you want to get the butt in the seat. But you should never miss this. And it's whether it's captured through the interview evaluation forms or an actual meeting, you got to make sure that everyone's thoughts and opinions are collected. The last thing you want as a recruiter is to proceed with an offer, have someone come in and a key player on that team says, wait, I didn't like them. Why didn't anyone ask me? This is not who I wanted to be on the team. And that will create a bad experience for the new hire, for the team, retention numbers, all that will go downhill from there. So that's how important the debrief is. And there's a few tips for the debrief because it can be hard to get everyone together. There's time, takes a lot of time, takes coordination. But 3 really quick tips that can help make that easier are as follows. So the first one is, if you get everyone into a room, if you don't do anything else, ask them to do a simple must hire, should hire, okay to hire, or pass. Because even if they have to run out after that room, at least you have that to go off of. So if you don't get anything else, start there. Then, if you want to keep going, if you have the time, keep it short and concise. Don't let people talk themselves out of a good candidate that they liked. Tell them to say the good things, the bad things, and maybe something that would be a concern. Quick and to the point. And the last thing is to hear everyone's opinions, but start with everyone except the hiring manager. You don't want the other people on the team to get biased by the hiring manager's opinion, and the hiring manager is going to want to know what people in the trenches think of this candidate because they're going to be working with them shoulder to shoulder, so that's really important. And then after that, have the hiring manager go in with their 2 cents and then combine it after that. And remember, you're the hiring expert. You're the one who does this every single day. This could be your hiring manager's first or second hire, and they might not know what's best for the company, what's best for the rest of the team if they're new to it. So if you do have the company and the team's trust, add in your 2 cents. Let them evaluate for the actual nitty-gritty skills, but if you know that they wouldn't be a culture fit, you know that they may or may not be enthusiastic or committed to the role and they're going to leave really quickly, let the hiring manager know, let the recruiting or the hiring team know, because you are the expert in this. So after the debrief, you need to make sure, like we mentioned with the job description portion, is to iterate and improve constantly. When you're doing this day to day, it's easy to forget your best practices and kind of go on autopilot, especially when you have regular hiring managers that you work with every single day. But you got to make sure to keep your best practices and your standards for communication, timely follow-up, and evaluations high, because as all the recruiters out there know, it's never a linear process. Things are always happening. Things are always pushing the process left and right. So it's really important to stay on your toes and to not get complacent with the way that you do things, because every role is different, every hiring manager is different, and every time of year is different too. So make sure to check in on those feedback and evaluations, especially if you find you're not finding the right hire, you're bringing in 5 or 6 people and it's still not working. Just evaluate and go back to it. There's no reason that you can't go back to square one and start over and rethink your process, because that will happen, and I don't think there's any recruiter out there that can follow a checklist every single time, because it'll never ever turn out that way. And the last part to really remember is to review and measure. As a member of the HR team, not just the recruiting team, retention is the most important thing. Make sure you review and evaluate your process. Our boss on the HR recruiting team always breaks down things like this. You break down a hire with what worked and what didn't work, and then improve upon that. So you can work with your HR team, which is something that our recruiting team has done here, is to look at retention rates. Look at performance reviews, see how your hires have been doing. Check in with them. There's no reason that just because you're the recruiter and they're already in the seat that you can't check in the first month or two, see how things are going. And that's great feedback for your HR team as well. You'll have the inside scoop on that. So definitely try to add that information, that 2 cents to your team. And a great collaborative hiring process can help you with future hires. So if you do have a brand new hiring manager that does not want to follow this process, that just wants to tell you what to do and not have any sort of back and forth with you, show them like, hey, I had this one hire, this was difficult, we went through this process, that didn't work, so we went back, and you have data and examples and analytics to show for it. There's no reason for them not to jump on board. And I know being part of Jobvite, being in the recruiting and this industry, data is everything, results and examples are everything, so this is a great way to make sure that you kind of have your own portfolio of a good collaborative hiring process. And like I said before, if you do have a bad hire or there's a difficult process or someone comes on board a month later, they go ballistic and they're gone, you have data right there to show you that something didn't work, and the next time you go through this collaborative hiring process, you have some stuff to bring into it at the get-go. So there's no reason that you shouldn't review and measure, good or bad. All the data is really helpful. So to conclude, like we all talked about, in an ideal world, the hiring team would all work together, we'd find the best candidate possible in a week, and that would be it. But then, where's the fun in that? Where's the recruiters and all that? So in reality, there are so many competing priorities and perspectives, confusing guidelines, and unreasonable expectations, but the goal is to have collaborative hiring address all of those and make it more of a process than just a checklist to follow. So if you didn't get anything at all this whole webinar, this is the slide to remember. The first one is understand everyone's definition of success. Set the process up for success. Put it on the right tracks. Make sure that everyone's on the right page before you even start talking to anyone. The second one is to keep the lines of communication open. Set yourself up in a good way for the hiring manager, for the hiring team, and for the candidates to have an open avenue to you for any clarifications, questions, or concerns about the process, because you're the one that can move it into the right direction. The third one is to create a great hiring team. Do you have the right people in there? Are they good representations of the company? Do you want them to represent what your company is like and what the environment is here and what the job will be like, because they are the brochures of your company in that time. And last, to continue to check in and iterate throughout the hire. Things are never black and white, so it's a recruiter's job to be the most flexible and ready to improvise and edit on the go. Like I said, staying on your toes is what's going to make everyone successful. So to kind of wrap it up, what's recruiting without a little bit of chaos? But as members of the recruiting and HR team here at Jobvite, we have to be able to show some method to our madness and help the hiring team and the recruiting team and the hiring managers and everybody in the process that there's always places to improve and there's always ways to work together to have a good hire.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. Hopefully everyone listening in found some useful information, got some great tips out of that. Obviously, we would love to continue the conversation, so feel free to ask any questions that you have on Twitter. Our handle is simple, @Jobvite, or in the expo hall we have a couple of different people who are at the ready to answer your questions, whether it's about Jobvite itself or about collaborative hiring, how Jobvite could help you do that, or some templates and examples of things that you could be doing software agnostic. Anyways, my name is Claire Alloway. I hope you had a great time, and thanks so much for joining.